That's great. Thanks, Dennis. I'll just introduce myself to begin with. My name is John Dempsey, and I work as Head of Finance and Accountant for Kilkenny County Council. And I also have responsibility for economic development. Now, what I'm going to do is speak for maybe 5 or 10 minutes just on this evening's theme of economic development. And then I'll finish up with a few minutes on service provision by the Council. I suppose when you look at economic development, Dennis referred to it earlier. The current county development plan outlined the need to prepare an economic development strategy. We didn't have one up to 3 years ago. So we prepared that strategy 3 years ago. It followed on from consultation with groups such as yourselves and input and policy from the Council. So the Council, through the councillors, would have adopted the strategy. Again, it's quite a detailed document. I'm not going to go through it in fine detail, but I suppose I'll pick out the 2 or 3 main things that we're saying in it. I suppose for the first time, we laid out the sectors, the business sectors, or the industrial sectors that we wanted to try and get investment from. And those priority areas are agribusiness and food, tourism, pharmaceuticals, logistics, services, be it financial or ICT or general corporate services, and then finally third level to improve third level access in Kilkenny. So they're the high level sectors that we were looking to try and improve what we have on offer in Kilkenny. When you look at those sectors, not each sector, every sector will have its own attributes, certain infrastructure that it needs, or certain access to particular types of workforce or whatever. So not every part of the county will tick all the boxes for each of those sectors. And we have to consider the question of, well, where would you try and provide services for each of those sectors? And where would you have the best chance of attracting investment as well? And I suppose we've narrowed it down to Kilkenny City and Bellevue in the main. Now the county towns, the other county towns will support that, but they are the 2 main zones that are targeted for investment. So again, looking at Bellevue here locally, obviously the pharmaceutical and logistics businesses, they're ideally suited to the zoned land that's available in Bellevue. Similarly for services, financial services and ICT services, Kilkenny City and Environment already has a core complement of companies that are involved in that space. So you'd be looking to build on what's there already. Tourism, again, Kilkenny is a very strong tourism county, both the city and county. And again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already something there that people are coming to see and that we're benefiting from. So we want to add to that. So it's important because it's important to know what the priority areas for investment are, because we have limited resources. We can't have money for everything. So we need to be, I suppose, quite discerning in how we use those resources. I suppose that last point on the slide, it's obvious, but we're in the middle of a downturn and recession. And if you're going out and promoting the county from an economic development perspective, it's a hard slog because companies, be they Irish or be they foreign, they're a lot more cagey and cautious about expansion. And you're not seeing the same level of activity that you might have done in the past. I suppose when we are going out and promoting ourselves, okay, we're promoting Kilkenny. Obviously we're going to promote Kilkenny, but we're doing so in a regional context. We have to be aware, especially with foreign investment. The IDA are doing well to attract people to come and look at Ireland. And when they come to Ireland then, the IDA will tell them, show them what's available in Ireland, and they'll pick a prospective investing company will pick 2 or 3 sites to visit. So we'll be doing well, Kilkenny or the region, to get them come to the southeast as opposed to going to Cork or going to Galway or even Dublin. So we're beginning to work a lot more together in the southeast region, Waterford City and County, Wexford, Tipperary, Carlow, to have a collective message, not just each of us pushing our own message. What's happened? I mean, the strategy is all very well. It's an outline of what we want to do, but what's actually happened in the last 2 years? I suppose I'll take what's happened under two headings: infrastructure and then other initiatives. Infrastructure is all the hard stuff, stuff that you put in place to facilitate business and also private individuals. In the south, the money we've spent on the South Kilkenny water supply scheme, that spend of €13 million, that's going to be very important for South Kilkenny. It has been important already. I mean, the problems we had in the past over the last 5-6 years with water shortages, they're hopefully a thing of the past now. They are a thing of the past. But also for industrial development, Bellevue now is fully serviced. It has sufficient water capacity to take prospective development for the next 5-10 years. And that's a big selling point when you're trying to attract investment, particularly in the pharmaceutical or other similar areas, or in agri-food. Again, wastewater. Waterford City put in a wastewater treatment plant based in Bellevue, and again, that was primarily for Waterford City's needs, but Kilkenny County Council have bought a proportion of the capacity of that plant, and it's available not just for private residential use, but also for industrial development, so that will help. The motorway system, it's probably the single biggest plus we have now in the region. We're now within very easy commuting distance of Dublin, and if you look at the country, I suppose a lot of the development in the country has been eastern seaboard driven, and we're now within that catchment area. So when we go and sell ourselves, be it Kilkenny or Waterford or whatever, we're tying into that. Broadband again, it's there in Kilkenny. There's first class broadband available in Kilkenny City. Bellevue at the moment, from an industrial perspective, it's not adequate. The businesses that are there, they have workaround solutions, and they're getting by. But if any big new users come in, they'd be under pressure. They wouldn't be seeing the level of broadband provision there that they might want to see. We have plans to sort that out, and you can do it fairly readily, so that is in hand. You might have seen back about 2 months ago publicity around the opening of a new ICT Research and Innovation Centre in Kilkenny. Now that's a joint partnership between Kilkenny County Council, WIT here in Waterford, and ITC Carlow. And essentially what's going to be there, you have researchers from WIT, about 15 to 20 researchers from WIT, working in the area of what they call future internet services. They are now based in Kilkenny, and they've occupied part of the building, half of the building, that's available for rental to start-up companies in the ICT stroke financial services area. So that's good news. Again, it's adding to what we have available, and it'll attract new business in time. Tourism, good strong tourism product in Kilkenny City as it stands, but it needs to be updated and added to. And we have proposals for a project somewhat similar to what you've seen in Waterford City, the Viking Triangle. We'll have our own equivalent to that. At the moment it's been styled or termed the Medieval Mile. There's 4 or 5 individual projects within that, and they'll add to the tourist attraction in Kilkenny. Now, on tourism, traditionally I suppose most of the attention would have been on the city, but increasingly over the last year or two we're putting a lot more effort into trying to create spin-off for the county, all parts of the county. So if you get people to come to the city, you try and hold on to them for a day or 2 days longer than they might otherwise stay, and get them to visit towns and villages and stay locally than they might have done in the past. So again, that's something that's underway. Other initiatives, Dennis referred to Invest Kilkenny. It's all very well when you go and try and attract investment. 2 things have to happen. You have to have the infrastructure in place that will facilitate development taking place. So I've given you a very quick overview of some of the major things that have taken place, but also you have to tell people about it, you have to market it. So back about a year and a half ago, we developed a promotional program under the brand name of Invest Kilkenny. Now that material, I handed out just a hard copy of that earlier on, but we're also using social media and websites and whatever, and there's quite an extensive effort gone into promoting ourselves, and it's been quite successful so far. Now it's long and drawn out. When you go and try and attract investment, you could meet 10, 20 companies, and you're doing well if you get 1 out of 20 to to settle down somewhere. It's a slog, but at least we have material in place to try and work with that. Again, I'd be very welcome if any people have the time at some stage. Look through what's in here, look through what's on the website, and maybe feedback with commentary, good or bad, because it's something that we try and keep refreshed the whole time. We have an active programme of events around Invest Kilkenny, promoting the county and PR associated with that. We've developed linkages with China and with India. I suppose these are emerging economies. They're looking to begin to invest in Europe. We want to try and get a share of that. You'll probably see reporting in the press over the next month or so about a visit to a city in China called Suzhou. We've already twinned with that city. It's quite a large industrial zone in China, about 6 million people, and there's a trade delegation going out there in early September. So it's early days again, but there'll be hopeful signs that we might get something out of it. Agri-food, there's an agri-food group working under council, I suppose, direction. It has two main objectives: to try and help support 10 to 12 local, regional, small and medium-sized enterprises that are trying to break into UK and other markets. So we're helping them, I suppose, to work together to try and find routes to market, be it in distribution channels or otherwise. And then finally, on the agricultural side, milk supply, with the opening up of the quotas in a year's time, it's expected there's going to be a very substantial increase in milk supply. And not only farmers but the processors are preparing for that. As a council, we have a role to play from an environmental side, but we're trying to influence that for the best advantage of the county now. Again, talking about Bellevue specifically, you'll have seen in the last few days that Glanbia, they've lodged a planning application with the council for a processing plant in Bellevue. So that's in train, and it's good news. Connect Ireland, again, I'm not going to go into the detail on this, but that's an initiative that sprung out of Invest Kilkenny. Essentially, a local company in Kilkenny, TaxBack, run by a man called Terry Clune, arising from Invest Kilkenny and just, I suppose, discussions around that, he got the idea of going to the government and saying to them, look, there's an opportunity here to take advantage of the Irish diaspora, people that have Irish connections abroad, maybe get in contact with them and get them to think about making contact with the companies they work for, or people they know in companies that might be looking to come and invest in Europe. And essentially Connect Ireland, if you know someone abroad that's working in a company that is thinking about investing abroad in, say, Europe, and you introduce them to Connect Ireland, and that company are contacted by Connect Ireland and subsequently come and set up in Ireland, well, there's a finder's fee or an introducer's fee for the person that made the introduction. Now, Connect Ireland, obviously, they themselves have to put quite an amount of effort and resource into making contact with the companies that are thrown up and chasing them down and promoting Ireland. Their return is they get a fee as well. When the jobs are here 2 years, they'll get a fee as well per job. But it can be quite beneficial. Already there are jobs coming into Ireland off the Connect Ireland initiative. So I highly recommend, even from a personal perspective for yourselves, have a look at the Connect Ireland website. Kilkenny Tourism. Again, Kilkenny Tourism is a company. It's a mixture of both private sector and public bodies. It's a collective where people are coming together to try and promote the county from a tourism perspective. Now, Kilkenny Tourism, they have adopted a new strategy back at the beginning of the year, and it's being rolled out, and the marketing around that and the like is being implemented. So it's early days, but it's beginning to get traction and bump up the visitor numbers. So again, I'd recommend if you have a chance at some stage, have a look at that. That's the type of thing that's going on. So that's a very quick run through of some of the things that have happened in the last 2 years, and hopefully more to follow. Now, the next few slides, I'm not going to talk through them in any detail. This is just a visual representation of what's in our promotional material. This is the type of things that we're saying about Kilkenny and about the region as well, but most particularly about Kilkenny. So the first thing we're saying is, if you come to the southeast, if you come to Kilkenny, you have great connectivity. So if you're a business that's exporting and you're looking for somewhere to set up in Ireland, set up in the southeast, because you'll have ready access to motorways, you'll have ready access to the port, through Bellevue. You'll have ready access to any type of distribution network you need, and it'll be cheap access. You won't get anywhere cheaper in Ireland to come to in terms of your costs, your operational costs. An example of that would be the port in Bellevue. It's the closest deep water port in Ireland to Europe. Now that's a big thing. If you're shipping, containers, you want as little time as possible either on the sea or in port. So the more time you can take out of the equation, the better. So that's a big selling point. Apart from things like the physical infrastructure, when you go into a business, you want good quality people. And again, what we're saying here is, look, within a 60-kilometre radius of Kilkenny, be that the city or be it Bellevue, you have access to a population of 500,000 people. And, the mix of that is very good between people that are qualified, people that have worked before, etc., with experience base. You have, 3 third-level facilities within 30-minute drive. They're producing about 3,500 graduates per annum. So, essentially, what you have is you have a relatively young, flexible workforce, well-qualified workforce. And, don't just take our word for it. We can point to companies that are already in Kilkenny or in Waterford or wherever in the region that are serving international markets. They're either foreign companies or they're Irish companies, and they're making a success of their business from here. And, there's testimonials, I suppose, from those companies in the printed material, and they're on the website, on video and whatever, telling their story about how they found Kilkenny. And I suppose the point we'd make is, look, we believe in the region in Kilkenny there's an entrepreneurial culture, there's a culture trying to help people get started. So we'll do all we can to help you get up and going. Apart from a business perspective, the South East is actually a nice place to live. So it's attractive from that perspective. Now that does matter if you're the boss of a company setting up in Ireland, or even thinking about if you're an existing company in Ireland looking to pick somewhere else to go, you want to live somewhere nice. So it's not just all the business, there is the personal side to it. So the 2 zones, that's Kilkenny City. Those are, I suppose, the main selling points about Kilkenny City, and then Bellevue. And you'll notice, through the message we're given, it's not just a local parochial thing. You're part of a region, so you have access to Waterford City. When you sit up in Bellevue, you have access to Waterford and all it has to offer. In terms of myself and what we call the business support unit, we have what's called the business support unit. Now that sounds very grand. It's myself part-time, and it's also a colleague of mine, a lady called Ashton Hayes, who works full-time. And the idea behind a business support unit is to go and do the legwork on a lot of these initiatives. So the county manager, Joe Crockett, would be this is one of his 2 key priority areas. He'd put a lot of time into this person himself, and we in turn would support him on this. So these are the types of things we're doing. But really, if you're an existing business, even Kilkenny, and you're thinking of expanding or doing something different, and you have to go deal with the council, be it from a planning or an environmental or some other perspective, come and talk to us, and we will in turn talk to the respective areas within the council and try and get as unified a response as we can for you, make it as easy as possible for you, introduce you to the right people, and help smooth the path, so to speak. So that's the type of work we're involved with. Now we're involved, apart from dealing with prospective investors, we're also involved with dealing with other government bodies and agencies. So the likes of Enterprise Ireland or the IDA or Falch Ireland, or more recently, as with the ICT Centre in Kilkenny, the likes of WIT through their TSSG unit. Just to move on then to the question of service provision. I suppose the first thing I'd say is, you're probably all well familiar with the types of services that the council would provide. So they'd be mainly under the headings of housing, roads, water services, planning, environmental services, and then community and culture. With water services, responsibility for water services is going to move from councils to Irish Water in about 2 years' time. So that will move from us at that point. But all of those areas, there's a substantial resource commitment to each of those areas. Now, I don't propose to go into those. I don't have the time here tonight to go into those in detail. I suppose what's of immediate interest to yourselves would be, what's the closest point of contact for you to the council? Well, it's the local area office, and that's relocation from its current location in Newran to Ferrybank. So it will be based over the new library that will be opening in September. With our existing services, we're like all other public bodies. We've seen very severe reductions in budgets. Local government effectively is funded by central government, by the central exchequer. Over 50% of our funding comes from the central exchequer. So because of the central exchequer deficit and the need to cut back on funding, that's impacting us. So it's impacting on service provision. Within the council, we reduced things like headcount and staff count. They've gone down by almost 20% at this stage. But I suppose if things keep going the way they're going, it's going to be increasingly hard to keep going the way we're going. So it's going to have an impact. It already is having an impact. In terms of some specific services and supports that might be of interest maybe to people here this evening, if you're a council tenant or resident, well, obviously we have a state management service that we provide through the community and cultural section. So the likes of Lindsay here at the back would be very involved in that, or Martina Comfort. And, you know, if you have queries in that regard, you should make contact with them if you don't already know them. So looking then more generally at both private and public estates, you have the General Community Development Programme. From the perspective of specific grants, we have a grant programme called the Community and Cultural Facilities Capital Fund. Bit of a mouthful, but essentially what's involved there is we have funding available which originated from the likes of development charges that have been levied over the years. That funding is available to fund local community projects. There'll be small enough projects in size. The maximum grant we can make available to a community project is 45,000. But there is a funding programme there for the next 3 years. So if a project is underway, at least it's one source of funding that could come into the mix if you're looking at something. I mentioned the new Ferrybank Library opening in September, around the middle or end of September, and the area office. So that will be a new addition to the area. And then obviously you'll be familiar with the recycling service. There's a free recycling service at the old area office every Saturday between 10 and 3 for paper and plastic. So that's been a very quick run through. First of all, what we're trying to do around economic development generally, and then also service provision. But I'll take any questions then at the end.